What is up, everybody? It is Sleepy Panda 27 here, back with another recap for the week. Now, this week is exciting because we have the final week of the group stages of the Champions League. There's one more league in the Ascension League, but we had the last week of the Champions League, which means we know who's moving on to the playoffs bracket and who got relegated. You can see I already have the standings here. Let me get my pen tool out and let's jump right into it. So, we went over what people needed last week. A lot of it didn't happen. For example, in Group 2, anybody 3-0ing would guarantee them first place. 0 teams 3-0'd. Okay? In Group 1, Azirs Ascended could have gone out of first place if they had gone like 0-3 and lost to Swain's Flock, but that didn't happen. In fact, Azirs Ascended had a 3-0 week their final week, so that's very good for us, Pog. And that puts us first in the group. My team is first. So we made it to top 4 of playoffs bracket, and the rest of the order for Group 1 didn't change. This was the order it went last week. In fact, Swain's Flock literally went 0-3, and they still didn't lose their second place spot in the group. So that's just to show you how much this group was kind of already decided last week, which you could have seen coming. But there was definitely a chance for an upset. It didn't happen, but it was there. So let's go over the Group 1 standings. Azirs Ascended, making it to playoffs, not only playoffs, but guaranteed top 4. Swain's Flock and Powder Monkeys made it to playoffs, but they will have to fight week 1 to get their top 4 spot. They could be kicked down to relegation tournament, so they're at risk of going to relegation still. And Malachi Saplings, unfortunately, got the boot. They will have to climb through the relegation tournament if they want a spot in, and they'll have to go through the relegation tournament without losing a single game, or a single match, I guess. A single set. Not much to say there. This is kind of how the Group 1 has gone all season, and this was, the expected outcomes pretty much for a while. There was nothing super exciting, unfortunately, happened. But, yep, Malachi Saplings is the relegation. Swain's Flock and Misfortune Powder's Monkeys will have to duel it out. And there you go. Here I also marked their scores for each week, so we could see how teams in the ACL have progressed throughout the weeks. And we can see the group score. The reason I wanted to calculate group score was just to see how impactful week 1, the collab set, was, right, for placements. And it didn't really give us much information, but I have it here nonetheless. Okay, let's move on to Group 2, the more exciting group. We could see Nora's Tea Drinkers pulled out ahead. It's important to note that tiebreakers were very clearly important in this group. As you could see, the top 3 teams all tied, but so all 3 of these teams' placement came down to tiebreakers. So Nora's Tea Drinkers managed to pull off the best tiebreakers, which was kind of, luck on their part, depending how some of these games might have gone. If some of these games had gone differently, it's very possible that one of these 2 teams slots ahead. So, good job to Nora's Tea Drinkers. They secured first in the group by an incredibly tight margin, winning barely on some good tiebreakers. I don't know if the head-to-head was what did it, or if it's this higher set win rate. You could see that either way, these tiebreakers fall in order, right? So number 1 is 52%, 2 is 48, 3 is 44. So whether or not, I don't know what the tiebreakers came down to in the end, but it doesn't really matter. Congratulations to Nora's Tea Drinkers, also locking in a top 4 spot. Same as the Azirs Ascended, no chance of going to relegation tournament, so they are guaranteed an invite to next Champions League. I'm phrasing it as an invite because while theoretically we should know Champions League, I actually think it's pretty likely that 1 or 2 teams will just decide not to return for whatever reason. It just seems like a pattern that will uphold. So I assume that the qualification tournament for next season will filter some new people into the Champions League. But Nora's Tea Drinkers has secured an invite. So already we have 2 teams that we can sort of know are going to be there. And that's exciting because Nora's Tea Drinkers is new to the Champions League. If we remember our new teams to the league, it was Nora's Tea Drinkers, which actually came through the qualification tournament. So you can see that the qualification tournament still produced an incredibly strong team, ending up first in a very, very tight group. Another new team was Malachi Saplings, which also made it in via the qualification tournament. And then the other new team was Aatrox's Darkin. They didn't make it via the qualification tournament. They actually qualified from last season. They were last season's Ascension League top cutters. So, and we can see that two of the new teams secured a top two placement in a group. So that's pretty exciting. That's pretty cool. Congratulations to those teams. And, the spots here don't matter too much. Actually, it will matter quite a bit, I think, because Aatrox's Darkin is going to have to go against Powder Monkeys, and Lee Sin's Dragon is going to have to go against Swain's Flock. And if these scores are anything to attest to, we could see that Flock is a pretty high, a pretty substantially higher quality team than the Monkey team is. So Aatrox's Darkin is probably going to have a slightly easier time. But alas, that's the tiebreaker. So congratulations to Aatrox's Darkin and Lisa's Dragons. One of these teams, actually, it's possible that neither of them get relegated, but they're at risk of relegation. But they also are able to make it to playoffs. And unfortunately, Victor's Glorious Evolution in something that I think nobody would have predicted ends up being the last team. Why do I say that nobody was going to predict this? Well, if we take a look here, they had the second highest set win percent and second highest game win percent in the entire league. The first one's going to Azir's Ascended, but in such a tight group, they pulled 8% ahead of their next competitor, right? So that's pretty incredible. And the fact that and now they lost two matches. I mean, straight up, that's not even unlucky tiebreakers, nothing. They just, unfortunately, they went 6-7, and the rest of the group went 7-6. Not much you can really do about that. I predicted it was going to be dangerous for the teams that went 1-2, and Lee Sin's Dragons had that Group 1 advantage, and the two teams that went 1-2 were Evo and Dragons, and because the Dragons' Week 1 advantage, they eked out that top 3 spot, and Victor's Glorious Evolution didn't. So, it is what it is. I think it is a real shock to see. I think this was probably the team that people expected to at least make top 3 the most. I don't know about top of the group necessarily, but I think if we were to pick two teams that people would have really predicted were going to go top 2, it would have been Lee Sin's Dragons and Victor's Glorious Evolution. I think most people would have predicted that one of these two teams went out, and we kind of get a reversal on that. The two teams that I think were most likely to make it ended up last in the group, and the two teams that are not only new to the Champions League, but I think also sort of were expected to be one of the teams that went out. They pulled up ahead, so that's pretty interesting. It's really unfortunate for Victor's Glorious Evolution. They're going to be sent to the relegation tournament. Now, I think that they can crush the relegation tournament. I think they're going to have a hard time because they can't, if they lose a single match in the relegation tournament, they have to 2-0 the relegation tournament at this point to make it back in the Champions League. I think they can do it. My concern is if they want to. I know that they were sending some messages in the Aegis chat that they were pretty bummed out about this result, which is they have every right to be. They performed pretty well this season and kind of just slightly underperformed in this last week, and now they don't even have a chance at getting in the money. I can see a world where that's pretty discouraging. So I hope that they don't. I hope that they don't give up. I think that they can crush the relegation tournament pretty handily if they want to and return to next Champions League. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I'm not sure if they'll want to return. They might have lost motivation, which would be sad, but it's a pretty disheartening defeat, especially when you perform so well in sets and games. And one other thing I want to mention too is especially RoboMaster. If we look at the stats, RoboMaster went 5-1, which is the highest score of anybody that played all 6 weeks, pretty much. Lawa, I don't know how Lawa only has 5 sets recorded. So maybe Lawa is at an equal level. But if we look at the players like Chicas and RoboMaster, I believe are the only ones that went 5-1 and also played all 3 weeks. And so I think it's particularly crushing to Robomaster, who really put in a crap load of effort and work, and maybe it didn't get rewarded for that. I'm wondering, does Group 2 not have a reported match? That's the collab? Yeah, I've got no idea. Got no idea how these player stats are working out. Like, how does Salty Simon only have 5 games and how does Lava only have 5 sets? I'm not really sure. They should be divided by 2, but either way, it's a tough spot to be in, and my heart goes out to Robomaster. I think even if Victor's Glorious Evolution decides not to go, I hope that Robomaster will return and gets a spot on a Champions League team. But really, I just hope Victor's Glorious Evolution returns. I'm certain that they'll be able to make it through the relegation tournament just fine. So, pretty intense stuff here. You know, it is what it is. You know, there's nothing much else to say. Congrats to the teams that made it. This is what our playoff bracket will be at. Let's take a quick peek at what we know is going to be in it. So Azir's Ascendant and Norris Tea Drinkers get the first week off. They're guaranteed top 4. They get a bye week. And our 2 matches are going to be Aatrox's Darkin versus Powder Monkeys and Swain's Flock versus Lee Sin's Dragons, which are going to be really interesting. I think, if you want my quick takes, I think Aatrox's Darkin is going to beat Misfortune Powder Monkeys. I don't know for sure, but that's my prediction. I think this matchup is going to be harder to predict. I think this will honestly just come down to whoever prepares more this week. I think either team is very capable of beating the other if they take it seriously. But I'll give a slight edge to Swain's Flock just because I think Lee Sin's Dragons is more likely to underestimate Swain's Flock than Swain's Flock is likely to underestimate Lee Sin's Dragons. And so I think there's a higher percentage chance that Lee Sin's Dragons underprepares than Swain's Flock. But honestly, who knows? It could go either way. Swain's Flock in that last week went 0-3. So I don't know what they were doing. Maybe I assume they were just trolling a little bit. Certainly their lineups were a little bit wacky. I think if they take it seriously, though, they could definitely do well. And I think they shouldn't be underestimated. But I think this match just comes down to whoever takes it the most seriously this week. So that's our playoffs bracket. Let's look at the Ascension League. So here we can see that in the relegation tournament for the Ascension League, we have Glorious Evolution and Maokai Saplings already filled in here. They're not actually going to play for another 2 weeks. Actually, I think 3 weeks. Yeah, they're gonna have 2 weeks off, which is also probably gonna not help the demotivation for Victor's Glorious Evolution. So I don't know how well they're going to do or if they're actually going to make it. I think if they want to, they definitely can, though. And we're going to see the results of this next week. So let's look at our standings here. We can see it is incredibly, incredibly tight. We've got 3 teams tied for 2 through 4. And Trundle's Trolls is at the bottom here. Is just underway, but again, only by one game. So now Puff Caps is definitely not locked in. This team is definitely not locked in for first place, but I believe if they go 2-1, they make it in, right? Because that would put them at 11-4, and they're facing one of these teams. Yeah, so yeah, if any of these teams 3-0, right, the best that they can do is 10. So Puff Caps only has to go 2-1 for the 100% chance of making it in. 1-2 will actually still probably lock them in first place just because they should have good tiebreakers. Even if they're tied on the head-to-head, they should have pretty good tiebreakers. Although actually no one will be, people will be tied on the head-to-head. Let me quickly look at the schedule. How many times does each team play against each team? Is it just 3? Puff versus Vanguard. Puff versus Vanguard. Puff versus Vanguard. Okay, so it's actually only 3 teams. So all tiebreakers should come down to the head-to-head. So It is possible that if they go 1-2, 1-2, they'll actually lose to one of these two, to one of the teams they lost, if that team also goes 3-0, right? So that team has to go 3-0, and they have to, obviously, at that point, they would have beaten the Puff Caps. But it's also possible that they go 1-2, and the two teams that Puff Caps plays against doesn't go 3-0, and another team goes 3-0, like Keg or something, and they win those tiebreakers. Basically, the only way they're really going to lose top plays is if they go 0-3, and they haven't gone 0-3 a single week yet. So I'm pretty confident that Teamless Puff Caps will get first. It's technically not locked, but it's very likely. The rest of these teams, obviously, it's going to come down to tiebreakers, and that's going to be important because this second seed slot obviously means $80 and a really high percent chance of getting into the next Champions League. I fully expect that we'll see Teamless Puff Caps in the next Champions League, and I don't know if we're going to see a second team, but your best shot is, whatever team gets this second place slot is going to have a really good chance compared to anybody else in the tournament. So, because they have 2 lives and they only have to win 1 game, right? They can go 1-1 and still make it in. So, this second seed slot is going to be really important. And that makes it kind of interesting because now we have to figure out who's playing against who to figure out what people need to do for that second seed slot, right? So this is where the Ascension League gets sort of complicated because, as you can see, they only play 3 matches, right? So in the Champions League, it's kind of easy to figure this stuff out because you know that every team has a guaranteed chance of playing every team. So you could just figure scores out, right? But, for example, Kegs versus Poro, Kegs versus Puff, Kegs versus Troll, we could see here, Kegs is fighting the first slot team, and then Poros, and then Trolls. Okay? So there's going to be some tough matches, and it's important to know that they're not actually playing against anybody. They're not playing against the other 2 teams they're tied with. Oh, no, they are. They're tied with Bronze, Wine, and Poros, right? So they have a very good chance of locking in this second place spot if they beat this match, right? The winner of this match is going to be vitally important. But if they win this match and then lose the other 2 matches, right, and Barge Chimes just goes 2-1, well, now suddenly Barge Chimes is going to get that second seed slot. So this match is important, but it's not the most important thing, right? So really they're looking to lock in the 2-1, where this 2-1 includes beating Brahms Mighty Poros. That should be what they need to do to lock in this first slot. So if I were the Powder Kegs, I would be targeting Poros and also trying to make sure that they don't lose a game, or at least 2 in a game. So if they go 2-1 and beat Poros, they have a pretty good shot at hitting second place. Again, I don't think it's guaranteed, but that's probably their best chances. So now let's look in the perspective of Brahms Mighty Poros. Brahms Mighty Poros is going to be playing against Kegs, which we know, Chimes, and Vanguard. So this is another thing I want to talk about, is that teams going against Garen's Vanguard are going to have an advantage because it's very likely they're going to forfeit. They forfeited last week, so it's very likely they're going to forfeit this week, which means that Vanguard's opponents are probably going to get a free win. So Poros here is fighting Garen's Vanguard, Gangplank, and then what was the third one? It was Chimes, I think. Pretty sure it was Chimes. So if we look at the schedule, Kegs, yeah, Chimes. So this is tough for them because they may be getting a free point from Garen's Vanguard, but this matchup will still be important, and this matchup is really important. So in a sense, it's not going to be easy for any team, but Brahms Mighty Poros probably has the most control. I think they have a really good shot of getting that second place seed. One, because they're getting the probably free win from Vanguard. Again, Vanguard may not forfeit this week, and that would throw a monkey wrench into this analysis, but they're probably going to have the free win from Vanguard, and then they're fighting the other 2 opponents they're against, right? So if they just prepare, right? They only have to prepare for these two matchups, and if they focus really hard on those and win both, they're guaranteed it, right? If they like guaranteed if they go 3-0 this week, if they could beat both matchups, they for sure lock their second spot, right? Now, Kegs, once again, Kegs going 3-0 means that Chimes could still go 3-0, and then it would come down to their head-to-head, which I don't know right now. And so it's sort of not in Gangplank's control. Additionally, Gangplank has to go against Puffcats, which is not an easy team to fight. So while I think that I think Kegs has obviously good tiebreakers, or whoops, that's not the right thing, right? 60% here, that's pretty good tiebreakers. They're in for a difficult week, and this week it's sort of out of their control as well. The most important thing to Kegs is beating Brahms Mighty Poros and not losing too much, right? They could sort of lose one game, but if they lose both, they're probably out of top two. Whereas Mighty Poros has a really easy time because they're probably getting this free point instead of having to go against Team of Puffcaps, and they're going against both their competitors. Okay, so let's look at Chimes now. What does Chimes need to do? So Chimes is against Vanguard, which again is free point. Then they're against Poro, and then they're also against Puffcaps. So Chimes is sort of in a similar situation in Kegs, but it's different, but it's slightly different. So if we look at this, they're going against Mighty Poros, Puffcaps, Vanguard. They get the free point from Vanguard probably, and they can control this match. But again, they're not going against GP Kegs, so they cannot control that matchup. And Teemo's Puffcaps is going to be a pretty tough opponent, right? So Barge Chime's most important matchup is the Braum Mighty Poros. And again, really, for getting the second seeded spot, the most important games are going to be the ones, these two games, right? The Poros versus Chimes and Kegs versus Poros. Those two matchups are going to be critical in determining who gets second placement. Let's quickly look at the standings because we know that Kegs and Barge Chimes have played all three games. So let's quickly just take a look at their tiebreakers here. Kegs 1-1 here. Kegs 1-1 here. And so Kegs is 2-1. Okay, so if both teams go 3-0, it means Kegs will get second spot. So Kegs' goal to get second spot is 3-0. This will guarantee it. Boom. That's their way of guaranteeing it. Chimes, even if they go 3-0, it doesn't necessarily guarantee it because Gangplank can still go 3-0, and in that case, Gangplank will get that second seeded spot. However, obviously, if Chimes goes 3-0 and Kegs doesn't go 3-0, they're going to pull ahead in that fight. So Chimes has to do as well as they can in Prey, but they're still going to be good. Now, Trolls probably is not competing for this spot here. Who's Trolls playing against? Let's see. Can Trolls compete? Trolls is going against Puffcaps, Vanguard, and Chimes. So it's really out of their control. They may get the free point from Garen's Vanguard, but they're going against Puffcaps, which again is going to be the hardest match, and they're going against Chimes. And Chimes is not going to be the team that they really need. Again, if Trolls goes something like 3-0 and Puffcaps goes like 2-1, it means that Puffcaps beat Powder, Kegs, and Chimes. And, you know, there's a chance there because they could have 9 points, right? So if these teams go 2-1 and they're winning tiebreakers, there might be a world. So really going 3-0 gives them the best shot, but they definitely have the least likely chance of hitting that number 2 spot, simply because they're unfortunately one game down. Now, the other contentious point is these next 2 spots. You can see here that Trolls is at a slight disadvantage. So they're the most likely to be kicked out, but it's going to be tough, and they do have an advantage. So let's quickly actually give the teams, let's do the analysis where the teams are against Vanguard, get their probably free wins and what the scores are going to look like there. So if the scores do that, Chimes is getting 1, Trolls is getting 1, Poro is getting 1, right? So Poros and Chimes are actually going to be 8-5, and Trolls is going to be 7-6. Okay, and each of these two teams are going to have 2 matches, whereas the other teams are going to have 3 possible matches, right? So this is going to be Trolls score. Sorry, who did we say was playing? Chimes, Trolls, Poro. So Chimes and Poro are the next 2. Right, so Poro score and Chimes score, right? So it's unfortunate. It's most unfortunate for Powder Kegs because really Powder Kegs actually is only going to have an advantage against Trundle's Trolls. Now it's a slight advantage, but definitely the most favored to take it I think are Mighty Poros and Barge Chimes, and I think the most likely is going to be Poros. Simply because of their matchups in the last week, not even because of what I think the player's skill is or whatever. Assuming that all teams are equal, Brahms Mighty Poros definitely has the most agency and good luck going towards them for getting that number 2 seed. Now, who has the best shot of getting, who's most likely to not make it? Unfortunately, it is going to be Trundle's Trolls, but the next most not likely is actually GP, right? So GP's Powder Kegs is in this second spot, but I think the 2 teams that are actually most likely to not make it in, or at risk, simply due to matchups, are Trundle's Trolls and Powder Kegs, because Trundle's Trolls obviously has that score deduction, right? 7 GP Powder Kegs has an advantage because they have that 7-5 score as opposed to 7-6, and this is a little bit better. But Game Like Powder Kegs has to go against some really difficult teams here, right? They're playing against Puff Caps and Chimes and Trolls, I believe. I think is what we'd say. No, sorry. Poros and Trolls. Not Chimes and Trolls. Poros and Trolls. So, in addition to Gangplank's Powder Kegs having this matchup, this Poros matchup, be critical for trying to secure this second place spot, their matchup against Trolls is actually critical for not being kicked out of the league, assuming all else is equal. So I believe in Powder Kegs. I believe they can do it, but they're definitely... Don't let this second place spot on the leaderboard fool you into thinking that it's not going to be difficult for them, because the fact that Garen's Vanguard is likely going to forfeit really changes the odds quite a bit, and it changes it against the Powder Kegs' favor. They're going to have to be the most tuned. Now, I think they're still going to be able to get top 4, one, because they have incredible tiebreakers. So even if they go like 1-2, it's pretty likely that another team or the Trolls are going to go 1-2, and they have good tiebreakers into those. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a tough week. So, yeah, if I had to do predictions, I think the people making it into the relegation tournament with a very good chance of winning the relegation tournament as well as getting that cash prize, my bet's on Poros and Puff Caps. But any of these teams are in contention here. Trundle's Trolls is again at a slight disadvantage, but if they go 2-1, they're probably still going to be fine. Because if they go, well, actually, 2-1 probably may not, because one of their wins is going to be Garen's Vanguard, right? So, sorry, who's Trolls facing one more time? Trolls are facing Puff Caps and Kegs. Yeah, I mean, it is looking rough for Trolls. Because if they go 2-1 but their win is against the Puff Caps, well, that might not mean anything, because then they're losing to Powder Kegs, who's really the team that they want to be beating, right? At that point, they're sort of hoping that one of these teams just completely craps the bed if they go 2-1. So Trundle's Trolls, I think, is really looking for a 3-0 to guarantee their spot. And that's not, that's a tough place to be in, because it's very unlikely to go 3-0. So, it's going to be tough. I sort of expect Braum Mighty Poros will get second, win that cash prize, and we'll see Gangplanks and Barge Chimes in the relegation tournament. But Trundle's Trolls could definitely do it. They're just going to have a tough week ahead of them. And with that said, I think that's it for this recap. It's a pretty light recap, but the podcast episode will be coming out tomorrow, and we have some exciting information. Next week, we're going to be able to determine what the top four of the Champions League is going to be looking like. So we'll see. We'll have guaranteed 4 teams from that. We'll see what our relegation tournament looks like. So next week's going to be pretty exciting. And the podcast I'm going to record tomorrow. So see you all later. Thanks for watching.